The following program contains distressing scenes.
Police are saying tonight that they're increasingly concerned about the whereabouts of April Jones, a 5-year-old girl from McKinley.
When I get the first call from the police, it always raises the heart rate a little, thinking about what it's going to be dealing with. I always feel pleased to know that someone wants to call on my expertise, but at the same time it's a challenge and I want to be able to respond to that effectively. On that initial call, I'm looking to find out as much information as I can about the circumstances, about the victim or the person who we're dealing with, what actions the police have taken already, and then thinking about what are the next steps and how we move forward. When someone goes missing, the first few hours are absolutely critical. We talk about the golden hour. It's not actually a defined hour, but it is that early time when we need to make sure we are following leads quickly. If they're calling me, this is going to be serious.
The town is a beautiful town. It's your typical Welsh town. It was always a warm welcome. You went in the shops, people kind of got to know you. It was just one of those nice, friendly places.
Machynlleth is a small, close-knit community, population in the region of 2,000 people. And the community spirit during the course of the investigation, particularly initially, was overwhelming. Not just those who live within the community, but then those who, came from afar really to assist with the search, which was a significant and a main line of investigation for us.
That investigation began on the 1st of October 2012, when a vulnerable little girl went missing from close to her home.
We didn't really know anything about April's family before she went missing. People who knew them said they were a normal family. They didn't have anything out of the ordinary going on in their lives. They would take the children to school, come home, just that typical family.
April was 5 years old, someone who attended a local school in Machynlleth. She was a child who suffered from mild cerebral palsy. Mum and Dad had been to a parents' evening. She was doing exceptionally well in school and she went for a swimming lesson. A sister picked her up during the course of the early evening.
This was all captured on CCTV footage that was obtained by Dyfed-Powys Police.
April comes home. Mum then is asked by April if she can go and play with some friends on her bicycle. In the area that they were living in, I think it's fair to say that the majority of parents felt comfortable and confident in leaving their children play within the grounds, if you like. And because she'd done particularly well in school, her mum allowed her to spend a little bit more time out than maybe she would have ordinarily. The brother of April, who at the time was about 9 years old, was asked by Mum to go and find April, bring her home. But what Mum was then faced with was her son coming into the house and basically saying that he'd been told by one of April's friends that she'd gone into the vehicle and been taken. A call came in from the mother into the Force Communication Centre, as would normally be the case on a 3-9's call.
Hi, police emergency.
I've got been kidnapped. I live in your with a dog. Hang on, Sal, can you speak to them for me? Hello.
And what makes you think the daughter's been kidnapped?
Apparently, she's gone off in a car with somebody. Somebody picked her up in a car or something.
Okay, what's the name of the child that's gone missing?
April Jones.
April, how old is she?
5.
During the course of the call, the mum has informed police officers that a 5-year-old daughter has been kidnapped and that it was a big grey vehicle or car and that there was a man driving. Initially, with regards to a call such as that, it has to be what we would refer to in policing as an overt response in the first instance. It is a crime in action. It's about getting as many resources to the area concerned, because obviously there is a life at risk at that particular time. The first actions, if you like, are to make sure that we can send officers to the scene to try and identify where this has occurred, to try and trace any potential witnesses to the incident, and obviously to speak to family and friends in order to try and establish the circumstances surrounding this particular case. It's a very fast-moving investigation at that particular point in time.
To help with that investigation, police called on the expertise of Charlie Hedges, the manager for missing, abducted and kidnapped children at the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre.
When I got the phone call at 8 o'clock in the evening shortly after April had gone missing, it was from a Detective Chief Inspector who was involved with the case, and he wanted to know whether the force should be using Child Rescue Alert as a way of releasing information at high speed to the media to try and encourage calls from the public, and it also then filters through to a dedicated line so the information goes directly to the police. And also she was explaining about the circumstances so we could consider various options for the start of the investigation as well. We knew that April had got into a van and had been driven off. It feasibly could have been that there's an innocent explanation behind it, but at the same time we had to be alert to more serious consequences. When we've got a child that's missing, it's important to understand the individual and their behaviour and habits, understand the circumstances of their going missing. Is there anywhere else that we can find out information about what's gone on, any witnesses, any CCTV or anything else that will help us to understand what's going on and think about how we're best going to deploy resources to try and find where she's gone. Advising remotely is always a challenge because you're not connected directly with the case and seeing how things are unfolding. However, it was the way we had to operate. My decision was to stay on the phone and stay in contact and then take it from there.
On the ground in Machynlleth, word was starting to spread about April's abduction.
Mum was someone who used Facebook, like many people do. Information was put onto Facebook that April had been taken, and that prompted, certainly lots of people within the community who were active on social media to come across that information, took it upon themselves then to come to the area where April had been taken from and to try and start searching for April. Certainly the first officers who attended were faced with a fairly challenging and chaotic situation in that you've got quite a significant number of members of the public from within the community, rightly so, wanting to assist in trying to search for April.
Very early on, people were going out and searching on their own, and then all of a sudden the police and the mountain rescue and all the organisations decided we need to have a better coordination of what's going on, because people were going up on the hills without any kind of coordination on knowing what they were doing, really. So very quickly they brought everybody together, and we played a part in that as a radio station, because we were telling people, let's not all go out there now, let's come to the leisure centre, let's get into groups, then we can all go out and search in the areas that the police wanted us to search in and where the mountain rescue wanted us to search in.
This is the scene at the local community centre where hundreds of people are still waiting for news. Many of them have been involved in searches throughout the day.
After the first few hours, it was well organised, and it became one of the biggest search operations ever in the UK to find April Jones.
October 2012, and in the small Welsh town of Machynlleth, vulnerable 5-year-old April Jones had been missing for 2.5 hours.
Of the resources available, the media is obviously a main line of inquiry for us in terms of being able to publicise what April looked like, the brief circumstances of her disappearance, in order to seek support really and assistance from the general public and anyone else who may be able to give us information as to her whereabouts. So on that basis, it was important that we got a photo of April and information to the media as soon as practicable in order to get hopefully a response from the public. Given that the incident happened at 7:30 in the evening, we were aware that 10 o'clock news is very popular for many of its audiences, so we took the opportunity to try and share information and provide a briefing to the media in readiness that it could be circulated at that point in time.
Police are saying tonight that they're increasingly concerned about the whereabouts of a 5-year-old girl from Machynlleth. April Jones, they say, was last seen playing with her friend on their bikes near to garages in the town at around 7:30 this evening.
The police were able to provide the media with plenty of information during that briefing because, crucially, the abduction had been witnessed.
April, at the time that she was taken, was with a 7-year-old friend who was present at the scene. You've got to consider the vulnerability of a 7-year-old, the time of day, what that 7-year-old had actually observed and experienced, obviously the awareness of all these people around the area, what's going on. So we had to put into context what we were being told in terms of what that 7-year-old witness had observed at the time. It was a crucial bit of evidence that we've got to look for other lines of inquiry, other intelligence information which hopefully can corroborate what the 7-year-old was telling us to assist us in terms of trying to identify firstly where April may be and, as importantly, who had taken April. So this is Brynagog. This is a quiet residential estate. This is where April would have been spending her time, playing with her friends. Fairly relaxed area where her parents were comfortable for her to spend time with others, playing on their bicycles and just enjoying as children of that age would do, really. When the incident occurred on the night of the 1st of October 2012, things changed dramatically in this area. April was taken from this area here. This is also the area where, facing outwards, a vehicle described by her friend as being big at the rear and smaller at the front was parked. We know from the evidence provided by the friend that April got into the left-hand side, driver's side of the vehicle. Initially, that took some further sort of understanding in terms of trying to work out how that would have actually happened in reality, because I think, certainly from my perspective, may have expected that April would have got into one of the other doors of the vehicle with the offender.
The fact that she got into a vehicle with someone else, did she get into it willingly? Was it someone just giving her a lift? Or was it something more serious? And we needed to understand exactly what was happening.
As the search for both April and her abductor continued, it became clear that finding this vehicle and its owner could hold the key to both their whereabouts.
It's always crucial to gather information as quickly as possible because witnesses have that information fresh in their minds, evidence is undisturbed. But also people can move further away from where they were, so the search areas get larger, and obviously the longer, more time elapses, the greater the concern for the safety and welfare of April was growing, and we wanted to be able to try and find her and look after her as quickly as we possibly could. I turned on the television, and at that time there was information on Sky News telling us about the disappearance of a girl in Wales.
Police are asking for anyone with any information to call them. They're giving the number out as 101, the number to call if they do have any information about a 5-year-old girl from Machynlleth.
It quickly led to a huge influx of calls from across the country with people wanting to help and assist. One of the basic tenets of Child Rescue Alert is to alert people and encourage them to call in. But the problem we had, the calls were going all over the place, so we decided to use it as a mechanism for making sure that the right information was being shared, and secondly, that people knew which number to contact to pass that information on. This case was different from many we'd dealt with before because of the amount of social media that was used during the case, and the widespread of information and the number of people who were responding to the case.
As well as leaning on social media to help with the search, April's mum, Coral, bravely went before the cameras to ask for the public's help.
April is only 5 years old. Please, please, help find her.
In the hills, fields and forests surrounding April's home, there has been an increasingly desperate search, with police and public joining forces.
We found out from the start, really, from social media, that something was going on when people started to use Twitter just to say, a little girl has gone missing. Suddenly, people were tweeting. It played a good part in terms of telling people what was going on. It brought people to the area to help with the search operation. The hashtags were there, people sending support for the family.
How have the community responded generally, would you say?
Well, I'm not from this community, I'm from the Lampeter area.
You've actually driven across from Manchester, yeah?
Yeah, it's a 3-hour journey this morning.
Sir, can I ask what brings you out here and been so determined to search?
Yeah, they're friends of ours.
It's a vast area with a limited population.
At the same time, you get those working for the media on the ground, if you like, in Machynlleth, speaking to people within the community, people who were involved, all the volunteers who were involved with some of the searching, and effectively knocking doors, trying to find out more information with regards to April and her family.
It wasn't just the media and the people of Machynlleth driving the search for April. The police had also turned to specialists in the hope of locating her.
Machynlleth itself is a town, obviously, in rural mid-Wales, and in terms of the geography of the area, that presented some real challenges. From just moving outside the town centre where we are, you'll see that there's a lot more mountainous area, forestry, and all of that needed the support of significant number of agencies with various skills and experience to be able to come and assist the police with the investigation, and particularly the main line of inquiry, which was the search for April.
We're very fortunate to have a lot of volunteer people who want to give their time to searching for those who are lost, missing, and put their lives at risk doing it sometimes. There's mountain rescue, lowland rescue, then there are specialists with dogs, people who go searching on bicycles, and a whole range of different things. And then there's others who specialise at searching in caves and other difficult environments like that. So they will always step forward when there's a case and want to be involved. And so it's then for the local police and the police search advisor to coordinate that activity and deploy it in the most effective way possible.
The search for April was exhaustive, and, inevitably, in a small, tight-knit community, people started to speculate as to who might have taken her.
So in a story like this, obviously emotions are high, so it's quite a complex case to cover from the radio station's point of view. A lot of our presenters knew the listeners, and they were ringing in saying, oh, well, we definitely know that it could be this person that's taken her, or it could be that she's gone missing up this area. And they were giving us this information, and we very early on decided we were just going to report the facts. We were not going to go with any kind of theories or speculation, and we didn't want to put out any false information that maybe upset the family. We didn't want to put out any speculation that got anyone else in trouble or that it could hinder the police's investigation. Some of the things we were feeding to the police, and then some of the things we were having to just say to people, listen, we hear what you're saying, but at the minute this has not been confirmed, so we're not going to report it, but thank you for letting us know about this.
Controlling the spread of information was key, and as the second day of the investigation progressed, there was one piece regarding the vehicle that April had got into that the police took the decision to initially keep to themselves.
When we established that the vehicle was a left-hand drive vehicle, we were able to gather information as to who owned that particular vehicle. The person who owned the vehicle was known as Mark Bridger.
Police hunting for missing 5-year-old April Jones now had a suspect. Local man Mark Bridger.
We conducted a number of background inquiries in order to establish as much information as we could in terms of, well, who is Mark Bridger? He was identified as a suspect, and we ensured then that I got a number of officers available and resources available so that we could attend a number of addresses that Mark Bridger was associated with in order, firstly, to try and find April Jones, but secondly, to try and identify and locate Mark Bridger.
Obviously, at the time, we didn't really know much about Mark Bridger. We know that he knew April's family and knew April because he had children at the same school, so they kind of knew each other. People say, and people do say this afterwards, but that he was a bit of a loner and always said there was something about him that didn't sit right with them.
We identified potentially 4 addresses that he had access to. We simultaneously attended each of those addresses in an effort to try and locate April Jones and obviously arrest Mark Bridger. There was one address in particular which turned out to be the home address of Mark Bridger.
Bridger's home was then placed under surveillance by the police.
When officers attended that address, entered the premises, Mark Bridger was nowhere to be seen. Obviously we didn't locate April Jones either at that point in time. But what officers reported was that the premises were stifling hot, there was a roaring fire, and that there was a very clear, distinctive smell of detergent and cleaning agents within the property. We were able to locate him at about 3:30 p.m. during the afternoon of the 2nd. At the time, he was walking between Cainlws, which is where his home was located, some 4 miles out of Machynlleth town centre. When Mark Bridger was detained at the roadside, an urgent interview was conducted by the officer, and Mark Bridger's initial account was that he had been involved in a low-speed collision with a bicycle with a child on at the location where the alleged abduction had taken place, and that as a result of colliding with the bicycle and the child suffered some injuries. He panicked, wanted to see if he could assist the child, considered CPR, but felt that it wasn't appropriate because of the extent of injuries, placed the child in his vehicle, drove away from the scene, and then at some point during the course of the evening into the night, he has just lost his memory and is unable to assist us any further in terms of what happened to April Jones.
Bridger was then detained at Aberystwyth police station and formally questioned, where he gave a near identical account.
I remember the dark-headed girl came behind the car. I started the car up. As I went to pull away, the car, there wasn't a thud, I can't understand. The car rose up. As I opened the car, I walked round, and underneath the front of the car is now, I know to be April. She was only little. So I picked her up and put her across my seat and put her in what is the opposite seat, the passenger seat. Tried to take her pulse, and there was nothing. I put my mouth over her mouth and went to blow, put my hand back on her chest, and that's when I realised one side of her chest wasn't there. I'd obviously crushed her little body. So I then drove out of Bryn y Gorg. My intention was to get her medical help, and that's when I realised colour had gone out of her. Hey, her lips were purple. Paul and Coral are friends of mine. And I've killed their daughter. The next minute, and I'm in my house, and she's not there. I can't remember what I've done.
We can't disregard the initial account, but obviously we are, not satisfied that that is the true circumstances of what has gone on. And, we continue with a number of lines of inquiry and speaking to as many witnesses, potential witnesses, to try and gain more information which can assist us in locating April.
While officers conducted those inquiries, Andy John had to inform April's family of this significant development before the media did.
It was extremely difficult for the family when they were informed that Mark Bridger was responsible for taking April. Given that they knew of Mark Bridger, they actually knew who he was, he lived within the community, he had children within the community. It was somebody who was known to them, who'd actually been a Facebook friend with the family. They probably found it a lot more difficult than had it been someone who was unknown to them.
With Bridger in custody and April's family fully informed, the decision was made to brief the press.
We have arrested a 46-year-old male from the Machynlleth area who is being detained at Aberystwyth Police Station.
People had already told us that they thought it could be Mark Bridger because he was the only person that they knew drove a left-hand drive car. Also, people had started to say that Mark Bridger was a strange person and things like that. So it didn't come as a surprise, but we had to obviously report sensitively. And there was real anger, and we had to be careful how we reflected that on the radio.
With a suspect detained, the police were able to widen the scope and nature of their search for April.
I think we realised that the case was serious within a very short period of time. A 5-year-old child wandering off, there can't be too many innocent explanations to that. Defra Prowse police responded to it in an outstanding way. They threw everything they could at it.
While the search for April escalated, so too did Bridger's questioning.
So from the account provided by Mark Bridger, it was important for us to establish whether there was any evidence on the vehicle to indicate that it had come into a collision.
I spent 2 days examining the vehicle. I was looking for signs of blood, possibly fibres. What I was looking for in the panels of the vehicles, especially low down, I was looking for fresh damage in the vehicle. This vehicle is a very, very old vehicle, and the paintwork on it had been oxidised. So if he'd collided with April's bike, or April herself, would have seen damage, fresh damage, which would have taken the oxide off, and you've seen fresh paint there. There wasn't any. There was no damage consistent with a collision happening. At the scene, I was asked to examine the roadway, especially the curbside and all the way out to the centre line in the roadway, and there was nothing found consistent with a collision. Given the size of the car, it weighs 2 tonnes, if it hit April's bicycle, would have seen the damage on the vehicle, but more so would have seen damage on the bicycle, which was a small bicycle, and it would have sustained enough amount of damage, and there was absolutely no damage to it at all.
The forensic examinations of Bridger's car and April's bike suggested his version of events was a complete lie. So police now turned their attention to trying to find out what had actually happened to April.
This is Cainws. This is where the offender lived. It's a quiet, small, secluded residential area, just a few miles out of Machynlleth. So this is the area where the offender's house once stood, and this, from an investigation perspective, is where the investigation took a turn.
My team were first involved during the initial search for April's remains, and the contents of his wood-burning stove were recovered from the living room of his property. And the examiner examined the contents of the fire, so the ash and all the debris that was contained in there, not really expecting to find any human material in there, but he identified some small fragments that he wasn't sure whether they were bone or not. They were less than a centimetre in size. They were white in colour, very fragile. Some of them resembled human bone to myself and my colleague, who are very experienced forensic anthropologists. Others required further testing.
The results of those tests would take time, but the police were satisfied that in Bridger they not only had the person responsible for April's disappearance, but also her murder.
As the investigation proceeds, what we know changes. It becomes a murder investigation, but despite this, the objectives are still the same in terms we need to find the person who's gone missing, we need to secure evidence, we need to understand what's happened. The search and the investigation still has to continue, but we need to do that not only for the investigation, but also for the family, to give them the answers they deserve when they've lost a loved one.
Alongside the search for April, the police were looking to gather enough evidence to allow them to charge Bridger. And back at his home, made another vital discovery.
Some further examinations in front of the fire, the hearth, identified a pooling of blood which was recovered from underneath the carpet. From my perspective, indicated that, something significant had happened in front of the hearth to April.
That blood sample was submitted for testing alongside more blood found in Bridger's bathroom. Its DNA profile was a match to April Jones. When these findings were put to Bridger, he desperately tried to explain them away.
The only explanation I've got is obviously if I've got blood on my hands, if I haven't dried my hands, you flick your hands, I've gone for a week. So it's possibly a transfer of blood from having some sort of blood on my hands. Obviously there was only a very minute amount of blood, which I've said from the beginning. I never ever recall having blood from the injury or from April's body.
And you made that
on me.
Yeah, can I stop you there?
Yes, sorry, yes.
There is sufficient evidence to charge Mark Bridger with the murder of April Jones.
When Mark Bridger got charged, the community really did change. It changed to anger towards this man. But because of the community spirit that they had, because of how everybody looked out for everybody else in that town, it just added to the weight of shock and anger for what this guy had done, and also the way that it was done as well. They were just so angry with what had gone on and so upset and heartbroken.
When you get to the point of charge, in a sense, it's then that the work begins. Would the evidence that we presented the jury prove on their part beyond reasonable doubt that Mark Bridger had abducted and murdered April Jones? Whilst we were confident that we had a strong case, there was a concern that how would that case come across to the jury given that we hadn't located April's body.
"5 days after April Jones went missing, Mark Bridger was charged with her murder. The police now set about building a case to take to court, with forensic science at the forefront.
We didn't test the fragments themselves for DNA because we were certain that given the condition of the bone, the fact that it was calcined, there would be no DNA left. 3 of the fragments had characteristics that looked very human. So straight away, I was fairly confident that we were looking at human bone. We also looked at some archaeological skeletons and did some comparative analysis to give ourselves an age range of the deceased, and based on the appearance of the comparative fragments, the size and thickness of the skull, the appearance of the sutures, we signed an age range of between 4 and 8 years. Bridger's defence team presented us with a list of animals that he said he'd put on the fire. There were 17 in total. We'd looked at the shape and the structure of the bone. We'd done scanning electron microscopy. We'd compared it to animal bones, but we still felt that we didn't have enough to say with as much confidence as we would like to meet the requirements of the court that the bone was definitely human. So we wanted to do histological analysis of the bone.
Histological analysis is the microscopic examination of tissues to study their structure.
We had a friend and colleague who works at the Forensic Institute in Milan, Professor Cristina Cattaneo, who is world-renowned for using that technique to distinguish whether remains are human or animal. And she found that there were no features in there that suggested that the bone was animal. The problem that Professor Cattaneo had was that she was looking at a very small field of vision. However, the osteons were consistent with human osteons and human bone structure.
Osteons are the fundamental structural and functional units of compact bone.
She assigned a very high level of confidence to it. We were very conscious of the small amount of bone that we had to work with, but we were very cognizant of the fact that this was all that the family had. We were just very conscious that we didn't want to do anything that was going to be unnecessary, and anything that the family didn't want.
The bone evidence was strong but not conclusive, so the police looked to digital forensics to further support their case.
Myself and my team were focusing on Bridger's laptop, and we had to carry out our own analysis to verify the findings by both the police and the defence expert who'd already carried out their investigation. We identified images of murder, not specifically relating to April, but other murder cases involving children. There were also cartoon images of sexual abuse of children and general images, inappropriate, indecent material involving children. The internet history clearly showed a build-up of activity prior to the disappearance of April, a lull in activity whilst the disappearance was happening, and then post the event, files were being deleted. It was clear from the evidence found that Bridger had an interest in the local girls, potentially could be deemed as stalking them by downloading material from Facebook profiles.
That in itself provided, some real concerns in terms of what potentially could have happened beyond the point of taking April had we not been able to arrest Mark Bridger for the offence. All the evidence on the laptop supported the prosecution case that Mark Bridger had abducted and murdered April Jones, and that it was premeditated and sexually motivated.
The police had built a robust case against Bridger. However, the search for April had been unsuccessful. Although Bridger had admitted he was probably responsible for April Jones's death, he had denied the charges of murder and abduction, so his trial commenced on the 29th of April 2013 at Mould Crown Court.
People were hopeful that Mark Bridger was going to get the sentence that he deserved, and there is no sentence that you could give to somebody like this, but they were hoping that he was going to go away for life and never come out, never be in a position to treat people or treat anyone in this way again. And I think the whole town wanted justice for April's family, and because it happened in this town, they had become known for what had gone on as well, so they wanted justice for themselves as well.
We were confident that the evidence that we had proved our case in terms of April being abducted and murdered, but not having been able to locate April's body did present some concern, if you like, that, you know, how would the case come across to the jury? From my perspective, one of the critical moments at trial was when the evidence was presented by the 7-year-old witness via video link. The witness was exceptional in terms of how she was able to recall in a clear way what had occurred at the scene at the time that April was taken. And when cross-examined by defence, she maintained her account, came across as, you know, open and honest, and that for me was a key point at trial in terms of being able to provide real strong evidence to the jury that, you know, this abduction and murder had actually taken place.
It must have been really hard for April's family to be seeing what was going on and to be at the trial. We respected them when they were going to court. Obviously we didn't want to approach them and do interviews with them, but you could see that the strain was getting to them. Of course it would.
After a month-long trial, the jury went out to consider its verdict, and after just 4 hours, it had reached its decision.
When Bridger was found guilty by the jury, it was a moment in a sense of mixed emotions, on the basis that from a criminal justice perspective, we'd secured a conviction. You know, that was tinged slightly by the fact that obviously we'd not located April for the family.
We are relieved that Mark Bridger has today been found guilty of the murder of our beautiful daughter April. April will be forever in our hearts, and we are so moved by the overwhelming support we have had from so many people from all over the world.
For his crimes, Bridger was sentenced to a whole life order, meaning he will never be considered for parole and will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
This is the toughest sentence he could have got. So there was the relief that justice had been done. But at the same time, there was that realization that the town will never be the same again.
Following Bridger's conviction, the decision was made to permanently remove any evidence of his terrible crime from the Welsh landscape. However, the scars still remain.
This area is an idyllic area. It's very quaint, it's secluded, very peaceful. And it's, you know, it's difficult to comprehend how something as horrendous, as horrific as what occurred on the 1st of October 2012 could have happened in such a beautiful location. It's very powerful to be back here in the area where a young 5-year-old vulnerable child has had her life taken away from her in such tragic circumstances.